BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, the views, the analysis you need on Friday the 28th of February. Spring is nearly upon us and we're looking ahead to a thrilling weekend in store in the men's Premiership.
Rangers have a fourth. It's a devastating counter-attack to complete a remarkable turnaround. Kilmarnock 2, Rangers 4.
After beating Kilmarnock, it's Barry Ferguson's first home game as Rangers boss. And there could be a cracker at the bottom end of the table as well.
A big chance! Goal! Mackenzie Kirk has scored! St Johnstone 1, Ross County 0. It could be a massive goal.
Could St Johnstone lift themselves out of last place? And as if that wasn't enough on Saturday...
Goal given, 3-1 Hibs, and the subs are on the park here. They recognise how big a result this is for Hibs. Goal! Vargas, 3-1, Hearts are up to 6.
Edinburgh derby and a new firm clash round off a sensational next few days.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And I have a sensational lineup with me this morning. Because it's Friday, we wheel out the best in the business. Cillian Sheridan, former Dundee and St Johnstone striker. He'll have plenty to say on a big game this weekend. Cillian, morning to you.
Morning, Phil.
And Gemma, the former Scotland goalkeeper, the former Scotland captain, and somebody who also has skin in the game for that big game at Dines Park this weekend. Morning, Gemma.
Good morning, Phil.
So we are, 94 seconds into the podcast, and already I'm going to annoy the producer by ripping up his script because he says, let's start off at Ibrox. And I'm saying, absolutely not. Let's start off at Dines Park, where the battle of the season awaits. Cillian, as a former player of both sides, what happens this weekend when St Johnstone go to Dundee?
I think St Johnstone are the team with momentum. They've got a bit of more hope with them than I think Dundee have. Dundee maybe have there'll be a little bit of, I think, worry. Their confidence will be hit. Dens Park's not an easy place to play when the crowd are on top of you, and I feel like they'll almost be going in expecting and waiting to get their booing started. So I've experienced it. So I just the way it's landed is brilliant in terms of like excitement and something happening down the bottom end of the table. It's actually really kind of brought all that alive, or it's given it the chance for something to spark there.
What happens as a former player? Is there a green light that goes up at Dines Park for the booing to commence, or does somebody sound a klaxon?
It's a bad run of form is generally the thing that starts it. But look, it's when everything's going good, everything's brilliant. But it can, when things aren't going well, it can be a tough place to play.
Gemma, let's look at that form. It's 4 defeats on the spin in the league for Dundee, just 2 wins in their last 12, and they're coming up against your side, St Johnstone, who seem to be resurgent under Simo Valakari. Take me into the mindset of a player, Gemma, who comes up against this form, this backlog of stories for Dundee, where they just can't seem to buy a win at the moment.
So who do you want me to take into the mind of, St Johnstone or Dundee?
Dundee to start.
I got lost in that question, Phil.
Well, we are only 2 minutes in, yes, of course. No, I'm wondering about how when the players all week are hearing about, man, you're on a terrible run and, you can't buy a win. Does that affect them come 3 o'clock Saturday?
It depends on the player. It's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's a really individual thing, isn't it? Collectively, as a manager, how you respond to... And if you look at Tony Docherty and Simo Valakari, it's quite interesting to look at their different, not their different approaches, but what they've kind of said in the media. And I think Michael Stewart picked up on it, sports scene. Simo Valakari, in the worst of circumstances, i.e. going through terrible run of form, coming in, team not doing well, has created this almost aura of positivity. So he's almost sucking out the negativity from the dressing room. And even though St Johnstone have been losing matches, what you've heard consistently from most pundits you've listened to is they like watching them play. Even on that surface at McDermott Park, which is a disgrace at this moment in time. Like, if you watch them against Ross County, yes, it was 1-0, but bar Jordan Amish, it could have been 3, 4 or 5 because of some of the chances that St Johnstone created. And yes, that's because they've won a few games, but they were sort of playing that way anyway. Come to Dundee and you listen to Tony Docherty in the media, and some of the fans are picking up on this and not very happy that they're hearing, we've got to dig deep, we've got to do this, we've got to fight. And it's a bit of a different soundbite that you're hearing. So it's talking about the hardship and everything. And it sounds like it's just words, but that then can have an impact on a player around about, well, we've got to do this style of football versus what actually Dundee have done in the season when they've played really well and got results, which is a fantastic style of football. So it's really interesting, and it depends. If you're a Simon Murray, you're banging behind that because he is somebody that works hard and he fights. But if you're more of not a skillful but more technical player, and maybe a slightly younger player who's from a different generation that's grown up around about positivity and being pushed towards you, maybe that affects you differently. I'm not entirely sure that's answered your question, but it's just a few thoughts.
And that's what this podcast is all about. And by the way, I can't let you go without asking you about your thoughts for your commentary earlier this week when you said you were going to gamble 2 or 3 of your houses on the Dutch striker scoring. And she did. And then 60 seconds later, the Dutch went up the end and they scored. And I'm just wondering what you're living out of this morning. But we'll come to that.
No, can be fact-checked slightly. Because I never said I would gamble 2 or 3 of my houses because I don't own 2 or 3 houses. Let's be clear here. I said
2 of your houses on her scoring.
No, I said for the first time I said you would bet your house, not mine. I would never bet my house on her scoring, and that was based on the fact that she is the top scorer in the WSL and she has 96 goals for her country. So evidence-based, Phil, evidence-based commentary.
Coleman's-esque balls up from the commentators, but you were betting Thomas Duncan's house on scoring. Not scoring, yes.
I wasn't telling his wife that, but obviously.
Cillian, I wonder if St Johnstone go into this game with almost the easier task, even though they're 3 points behind Dundee, because they've got a target to aim for. Whereas Dundee at the moment are almost protecting the slight advantage they have over the Saints. Would it be easier as a player to aim for that target?
It's given them something to aim for. You're right. But then it's probably the first time in a long time where St Johnstone actually realistically are back, have kind of dug themselves out of where they were. So before they were probably playing games with maybe less pressure where they were already written off as, well, they're gone, they're however many points behind. Whereas now they've clawed themselves back up to being realistically getting themselves out of trouble. So it's probably the first time where they've maybe playing with a bit more expectation. I can't remember the last game where they would have been probably maybe slight favourites or the team people probably fancied to win a game. And then on the flip side of that, Dundee will be feeling everything that St Johnstone weren't feeling, where Dundee are it's like we were saying, they're on the other side of that momentum where they're kind of being dragged into it, whereas like you said, St Johnstone are the ones fighting up. So it's I think it's mostly down to the momentum within the teams and the confidence in the dressing rooms.
The other thing to add to that, Phil, though, is it's a Tayside derby, right? And you love playing them, Cillian. They're quite tasty. There's no love lost between people from Perth and people from Dundee when it comes to those matches.
Who wins tomorrow?
I think we were talking about it yesterday, and I actually think I'd probably fancy St Johnstone, just for all the reasons of, I think Dundee would probably prefer to be playing away from all the noise and negativity. They're at home. It's St Johnstone have the confidence and a bit of momentum behind them. They might come past the ball a bit, frustrate Dundee, get the crowd on them. And at the minute, I'd probably say St Johnstone.
Gemma, who are you betting your many houses on tomorrow?
Well, my entire village is going on St Johnstone.
As easy as that?
As easy as that.
Because we've upset the producer by ripping up his script, I'm going to continue to do that. We're not going to Ibrox next. We're going to Ross County Kilmarnock. Two teams both struggling for consistency. Gemma, how does this one work out?
It's really interesting because we've talked about St Johnstone's victory against Ross County. I think what we haven't talked about is the form that Ross County were in, actually, and how good that victory was from St Johnstone, because Ross County's away form's been really good, but it was a shadow of the side that we've seen from Ross County, and as you say, unpredictability a little bit. Jordan Amish, as we said, was excellent for them and prevented it from being a lot more. Akil Wright, his uncharacteristic error that he showed, that he popped up against, which is he's been really good for them this season, and Ronan Hale was kept particularly quiet, But they're going to Ross County. They're playing Kelly. They've already got 2 up on Kelly this season already, beating them home and away. It's not a happy hunting ground for Derek McInnes's Kilmarnock, and also away games at this moment is not happy for Kilmarnock. I don't think they've won. They've lost their last 3 away games. So, and they haven't won up in 8 goals, I think, up in Dingwall, drawing 3 and losing 5, or maybe the other way around. So, if Don Cowie can get his team to understand that last week was a bit of a blip for them and get back to what we've seen for them in recent weeks, it's going to be extremely tough from Kilmarnock. However, that if you take away the fact that Rangers were particularly poor in the first half an hour, Kilmarnock were pretty good as well. It wasn't just Rangers being bad. So it's a really intriguing game.
Yeah, and Cillian, the one thing for the other night for Kilmarnock is that they were 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. Actually, after 25 minutes, they should have been 3 or 4-0 up. And I just wonder, it's almost what the players take out of that. Do they take out that they got a bashing in the end from Rangers, or do they take out that they should have been more as 2-0 up in the first half?
I think, probably once the dust settled, and I don't think that would have been Derek McInnes straight after the game. Probably everything, they think about it all and review it. They probably will look at it, right, the first 30, 35 minutes, we were brilliant. Let's just go get back to that. That's our standard of playing. I think if because it's such a short turnaround, it's more easy to just go and look for the positives. Whereas if you've got a full week in between, he's probably dwelling on things, and then you're going to work more on the mistakes made. So he probably would have just been picking out more of the positives and just trying to build that up quickly for the short turnaround. I think it's like, even with Ross County, have surprised me. They'll go on these little runs and they get themselves where they might have been getting dragged into a bit of trouble, and then they pull themselves out of it, and then kind of falter again and go on another little blip. So it'll be 2 teams that probably really need a win. It's in their current state. Kilmarnock probably more so than Ross County.
At 5:30, we have the unlikely event of a Scottish football team doing something that very rarely happens, which is beating the Old Firm twice in a week. Could be St Mirren, though, who do that. I mean, Celtic were really good against Aberdeen after 20 minutes. I mean, just a bit like Kilmarnock, Aberdeen could have actually been 2-0 up. As far as Celtic's concerned, Gemma, that second half looked like a team that were once again in their stride and will perhaps relish the chance to take on St Mirren.
I don't know if you relish taking on St Mirren in Paisley, but I think that...
Even the way Celtic played the other night?
Yeah, but you've got to remember that there were also opportunities for Aberdeen in that match. Mm-hmm. So, Celtic came out 5-1 in the end, but if you look back through the match and you actually watch the match, there's definite opportunities and there were definite slackness there from Celtic in the back particularly. So St Mirren will look at that, and they'll also look at their match that they had midweek and think that if, bar the mistakes, they could have taken something out of that as well. So, look, there's no denying the flow that you saw from Celtic in that second half, and the appetite from the likes of Ida coming off the bench as well. When they make substitutions, those substitutes want to start the next week. They absolutely want to start. So it's like being blown away by a fresh breeze when they come on. So when they hit their stride, and absolutely they were in their stride against Aberdeen, nobody could live with them. But that was with Aberdeen probably trying to go toe to toe a little bit with Celtic, and when you go toe to toe with Celtic, you gotta take your chances. So it's an interesting one. If Aberdeen had sat in a little bit, made it a little bit more difficult, tried to fill the spaces a little bit more, would have been 5-1, probably not. But that's not the type of football that Aberdeen want to play. I think Celtic will be far too strong for St Mirren. I think Celtic will get the victory. I am acutely aware that I said that last time I was on this podcast and Hibs beat them. So, but in this instance, I think what we saw the reaction from Celtic, didn't we? We saw the reaction, and I don't think Celtic don't really do like 2 slips or 2 poor performances in the space of like 2 or 3 weeks. It doesn't really happen with them. So for me, I think Celtic will take that one.
Gemma, I think we're making progress. There's self-reflection now on some of your selections on this.
From me, not from you, Phil.
You. No,
you need
never from you. Don't be
you still need to take that step, mate. I can help you. I can hold your hand. It's fine.
We'll take this off the pod. Cillian, as far as Ibrox is concerned, it's being billed the battle of the new managers, Barry Ferguson against Michael Wimmer at Motherwell. I don't know what to make of what could happen tomorrow. Motherwell on the bounce with that first win under Wimmer. A game of 2 halves in the old football cliche down in Rugby Park, but at the end, Rangers had a bit of swagger about them at Rugby Park, albeit very briefly.
Yeah, between the two clubs, there's quite a lot happening all at once. I think probably this would have been if he could have chosen a game to go in and start for Barry Ferguson and his team, for them to go to a game and start, he probably would have preferred this home one against Motherwell rather than going away to Rugby Park against Kilmarnock. The fact he got that done and got through it, and as you say, finished with a bit of swagger and confidence, and it was probably a little bit of dread, thinking with everything that's happened this whole week, we have to go away to Kilmarnock. And then with the way it started, it probably changes the whole mood around the place in terms of going back to Ibrox. Maybe that was the reason. Maybe it was the reason the players they weren't playing in front of the home crowd, where there is a lot more pressure on them, and it's probably not a great place to be playing at the minute. Motherwell not doing well, not on a good run, but new manager comes in, he's got his ideas to play. The more he'll get on the training is he can kind of implement shape. The better he gets at that, the harder they should be to play against. So I do still think Rangers will win it, but I think Motherwell probably need to guess better fast.
One of the great things about this weekend is that we have 4 matches to look forward to on Saturday. Come Saturday night, we won't have that feeling of, oh man, it's over for another weekend, because we've got 2 crackers on Sunday, an Edinburgh derby and a New Firm derby, which will probably put shudders up Dundee United and Aberdeen fans whenever I mention New Firm, considering the origins of that term back in the 80s and just how far Dundee United and Aberdeen are from then. Let's take a look at the Edinburgh derby first. Gemma, do you know what happened on the 7th of December?
Something.
Yes, it was the last.
I think that was the last time that Hibs lost. There you go.
Very good.
Thank you.
You have spyware into my script here. I mean,
it's just because I write all your scripts. Let's not pretend that I don't.
We've spoken before about David Gray. In fact, David Gray came in for some.
We've had lots of conversations about David Gray. I feel like I have intimate knowledge of David Gray now because we've spoken about him so much.
Well, I mean, listen, if he carries on the way he's going, he's going to be manager of the year, despite Brendan Rodgers potentially winning a treble. What is it, 14 games now unbeaten? And
you wouldn't 12 in the league.
You wouldn't bet against them beating Hearts this weekend?
Well, I'm just not going to bet at all, to be honest. That doesn't bode well for me. No, look, this is interesting. We were speaking before we came on air that the last time that I was on the podcast prior to an Edinburgh derby was they were in 12th and 11th place in the league respectively.
Yeah, that was right.
And neither teams could buy a shot on target, let alone a goal. And we fast forward, and you wouldn't think that we'd be sitting here with Hibs in 4th position in the league. It was just insane. But you're right. Look, Hibs are on this unbelievable run. I mean, you could argue that could have come to end during the midweek and maybe should have come to an end, but it's the game. It's the referee's decisions.
What are you trying to say, Gemma? Come on, get off the fence.
Nothing whatsoever. I always like to caveat these types of discussions with the fact that when you get a derby game, it's a tough one to call, because regardless of how well you're playing, it's who wins that mental battle on the pitch first and foremost, isn't it? It's about who sets their stall out and who in the teams understands what it means to play in that derby and get those fans in a position where it's like just a ruckus within the stadium. And when you look at the form that Hearts have been on, which they've done really well, Critchley's got them playing well up into that top 6, and then you look at the form that Hibs are on, which you could argue they're unstoppable at the moment. Well, the last time that they went, I think their longest ever unbeaten run in the Premiership was 12 games. Is where they're at right now. And the last team to stop that was Hearts in a 2-1 victory. So I'm not saying history could repeat itself, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, 11th played 12th last time we spoke about an Edinburgh derby. It's 5th against 6th this weekend. Cillian, a word finally on Dundee United Aberdeen. Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see the first 10 minutes from Dundee United, because I would imagine they'll be playing like scolded cats running out, especially with all the VAR chat from earlier in the week. We know that Dundee United have made representations to the Scottish FA to try and get the recording from the VAR incident released. Sportsound will, I'm sure, have much more on this over the weekend. Just from a playing point of view, though, how do you see United Aberdeen?
Probably Aberdeen they've got some confidence back. They've got a few wins recently that they desperately needed. Were in danger of just like in complete free fall. Dundee United probably, like you're saying, annoyed. They'll feel hard done by, but ultimately it's done. It's happened now. They can't be feeling sorry for themselves and kind of almost like put it down as a moral victory. It's not. They still lost. So I'm sure Jim Goodwin will be relaying that to them. That's right. It's done. It's happened. Let's on to the next one. Next one happens to be Aberdeen. They're like we're saying, in terms of Sunday billing, it's a great way to end quite a good card of fixtures. Aberdeen, I probably do fancy Aberdeen to win it.
Yeah,
I think they've got I feel like I've said it about every game so far today, but they're probably a team that's got the confidence that they needed, albeit from just losing 5 goals against Celtic. But that first probably 20-30 minutes was very probably, what's the word? No, it's definitely not uplifting. Encouraging, yeah. And they really needed it. I think it probably brought them back to the first time they played Celtic, where they actually could go toe to toe with them for a while, and probably that's what they've maybe been missing for a while.
Cillian, Sheridan, Gemma, Faith, thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry, I wanted to explore so many other areas with you, not least your commentary style on gambling, all these properties of yours, Gemma, but the producer is shouting. I've already dissed his script and now he's saying, get out, you're spending far too much time.
You're a rebel without a cause, Phil Goodlad. You're a rebel without a cause.
Gemma, thank you. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the big game at Downs Park. Cillian, you too. This is the Cillian Sheridan derby with Dundee against St Johnstone, which we'll call it. Listen,
Benny.
Thank you very much indeed.
Ever going to run out of them? No?
No, every weekend, I think, is a Cillian Sheridan derby. That's a podcast in itself. Yes, producer, I'm sorry, he's shouting again. I must go. Gemma Faye, Cillian Sheridan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Remember, it all starts tonight on the BBC Scotland channel. Partick Thistle against Livingston. Can Livy hit top spot? Jonathan Sutherland and the sports scene team will bring you all the action on the channel from 7:30. Of course, look out too for Sports Sound on Radio Scotland throughout the weekend. You won't miss a thing from our beautiful game. For now, enjoy the weekend ahead and the arrival of spring in Scottish football. We'll speak again soon.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated...
They said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
It caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.